Illinois, the land of Lincoln, home of the Blues Brothers, and a whole lot of political drama. It's a state with a rich history. But it's also a state deeply divided. The gleaming skyscrapers of Chicago stand in stark contrast to the struggling farms downstate. This divide isn't just geographical, it's political. And it's costing taxpayers. For years, Illinois has been a Democratic stronghold. Chicago, the state's political and economic powerhouse, consistently votes blue. This dominance has created a system where downstate voices often feel ignored. They see their needs sidelined. They watch as their tax dollars get funneled into projects that benefit Chicago. Is this fair? Not really. Is it surprising? Not at all. But the problems in Illinois run deeper than just a city versus country divide. There's a pervasive sense that something is broken in the state's political machine. Corruption scandals seem to be a regular occurrence. Taxpayers are fed up with the mismanagement. And the lack of term limits means that the same faces keep popping up year after year, scandal after scandal. Take Tiffany Hayward, for example. As the mayor of Dalton, Illinois, she misappropriated tax dollars, spending millions on personal vacations and fleets of Cadillacs for her entourage. She also funded police brutality and violations of the Constitution by supporting some of the nastiest bullies with badges. So what's the solution? How do we fix this mess? Well, it's going to take a lot more than just complaining about it. We need real reform, we need accountability, and we need to start listening to the voices of all Illinoisans, not just the ones living in the shadow of the Willis Tower. Let's talk about Chicago. It's a great city. Deep dish pizza, beautiful architecture, the Cubs, sometimes. But when it comes to Illinois politics, Chicago casts a long shadow, a really long shadow. You see, Chicago's political machine is a well-oiled, deep dish-fueled beast, and it's got a taste for power. Here's the thing, because of its population density, Chicago holds a disproportionate amount of sway in state government. More people mean more votes, and more votes mean more power. This means that the needs and priorities of Chicago often take precedence over those of the rest of the state. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with representing your constituents. That's kind of the point of being an elected official. But when one city holds all the cards, it creates a system that's ripe for imbalance. Downstate Illinois often feels like it's on the outside looking in. They see their schools underfunded, their infrastructure crumbling, and their concerns dismissed. And they see their tax dollars being spent on projects that seem to only benefit those living within city limits. It's like watching your roommate eat all the pizza you ordered and then asking you to chip in for more. This Chicago-centric focus has created a real sense of resentment and division within the state, and it's not good for anyone. We need a system that works for all Illinoisans, not just those lucky enough to call the second city home. Let's talk money, specifically your money, your hard-earned tax dollars. Now, most people would agree that taxes are necessary. They fund essential services like schools, roads, and emergency services. But what happens when those tax dollars aren't being used efficiently or effectively? What happens when they seem to disappear into a black hole of government waste and mismanagement? Well, in Illinois, it's not a black hole, it's more like a Chicago-shaped money pit. Illinois has a long and storied history of questionable spending habits. From lavish pensions for public officials to poorly planned infrastructure projects, the state seems to have a knack for lighting taxpayer money on fire. And while this happens everywhere to some extent, in Illinois it feels different, it feels personal. One of the biggest points of contention is the way tax dollars are distributed throughout the state. Downstate residents often feel like they're sending their money to Springfield, only to watch it get rerouted to Chicago. They see their own communities struggling while Chicago seems to get all the shiny new toys. And they're tired of it. It's not just about where the money goes, but how it's spent. Illinois has a serious problem with government waste and inefficiency. Projects run over budget, contracts are awarded to cronies and donors, and accountability, please. That's about as common as a sober night at a Wrigleyville bar. Gap 3S. While we've talked about the financial mismanagement that plagues Illinois, there's another critical issue that has people up in arms: policing and public trust. In many parts of the state, particularly in Chicago, the relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve is strained, to say the least. Let's start with the numbers. Illinois has one of the highest rates of police misconduct in the country. Reports of excessive force, racial profiling, and corruption are all too common. This isn't just a Chicago problem, though the Windy City certainly grabs the headlines. It's an issue that affects communities across the state. Take Dalton, for example. This small suburb was rocked by scandal when it was revealed that police officers had been involved in numerous instances of misconduct. But the tipping point came with the case of John Kiles. John, a young African-American man, was pulled over for a minor traffic violation. What should have been a routine stop turned into a nightmare. He was dragged from his car, beaten, and falsely charged with resisting arrest. The incident was caught on camera, and the footage sparked outrage. John's case became a rallying cry for those demanding police reform. Protests erupted not just in Dalton, but across Illinois. People were fed up with the lack of accountability and the systemic issues that allowed such incidents to happen in the first place. The state's response? A mix of promises and half measures. While some reforms have been implemented, many feel that it's too little, too late. The trust between law enforcement and the public remains fractured, and the scars from incidents like John's run deep. In Illinois, the call for change is growing louder. Whether it's about financial transparency or police accountability, the people are demanding more from their leaders. And as we've seen, when the public speaks, it's only a matter of time before the halls of power have to listen. So, what's next for Illinois? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear. The road to reform is long, and the journey has only just begun.